Hello, and welcome to my reflection for this week when we talked about print media. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and then we'll get on to today's lecture, or not lecture, but whatever you want to call this reflection. So I did a little bit more today just so I could gather my thoughts a little bit better. So reflection in print media. Wait a sec. Now I got it. There we are. So the key takeaways for me is that print media is still relevant, and pretty much in other words, it was just this one was just a big key takeaway, mostly because I never really thought about it too much. Like, I know that I'm not the market, but at the end of the day, like, even people that I would think that would use it don't, just because, like, for example, my grandpa's the only one that reads it at this point. Nobody I know, and we were talking about like millennials using it a lot, really engages in print media a substantial amount. In terms of newspapers, I should say. But magazines is a different story. Like my mom, aunt, like grandma, like they all love magazines. But then, and then the other key takeaways, magazines, they do have a prime place to put ads. Either it's just inside the back cover or just inside the front. And this is just, it's a key takeaway because if you want to utilize your ads, you got to think about like, this is where they're going to see it, and there are going to be better spots than others. Like, and I thought I would know something similar, but it's interesting to know like, oh, does actually make a difference. And lastly, is out of home media is actually a very substantial part in just creating awareness for products and sort of like making sure that people actually are um, getting, I guess, exposed to that kind of material, even if it's not something that you can necessarily translate into actually purchasing or purchase behavior. So in terms of stuff that I agree or disagree with, so I just agree with people are exposed to a lot more out of home media more than like mobile, like stuff on your phone or commercials. And I just agree with that just because at the end of the day, like I know I'm not the market, but I find that if I'm getting exposed to so much out of home media compared to what I do on my phone, no matter what, I think unless you're straight up looking at advertisements on your phone or looking at commercials, which I don't think there's going to be too many people that are going to be willing just to watch as many commercials, just the sheer amount of out of home media that you actually end up experiencing is significantly larger than anything at home. So what surprised me, so not that I buy anything, but I never really thought about actually how much I see outside. So, for example, like I take the bus, there's a significant amount of ads that I see on the bus. Now, it never affects me because that's not what I'm looking to buy. But at the end of the day, I don't think those advertisers are really expecting for me to or to turn me into a customer, but to turn somebody who's actually looking for those things. So if they might not know when they're taking the bus and they'll see it, then they're a lot more likely to be aware of it and maybe actually end up seeking it out. So the significance of this content is just so we don't um just because like for example like I don't use it doesn't mean there isn't a market out there. So in other words, like there is a way to utilize it to then target like get to your target audience. So just because it's not me, um if we want to target somebody that's going to be like let's say a millennial, then using this sort of medium is going to be beneficial than using something like and going full out on social media where they might not be as likely. And then we could utilize for IMC or future real life campaigns so we can actually make sure that whatever we're trying to sell in our target audience is aligned with however we're trying to display our product, because if we're not displaying it in the right spots, you're just not going to be able to create enough awareness for the people you want to sell to. Did you change your mind about anything? So for me, it was just newspapers still have a role to play. Now, I didn't necessarily think too much about that in terms of like, I never really thought of anything in newspapers. I use it just for it's like kindling for the fire when I go up to the cottage. And I know my grandpa reads it, but I never really thought that there was like a large market for it. And when I was like just looking at the stats and listening, you could easily tell that there was a good amount of a substantial market that's still willing to, even if it may be not as prevalent as it was in the past. And people are more engaged when it comes to newspapers just because they're actually reading it versus like with like a commercial, it comes on, but you might not be paying attention because you might be on your phone, you might go to the washroom, that kind of thing. What I thought I knew and didn't, not gonna lie, it's not really applicable. I didn't really think I knew too much going into it, just because it's such a form of medium that I've never really been exposed to. And so pretty much everything was new to me. What do I want to learn more about? So I put why companies feel the need to integrate some of these techniques, as there's no reason for them to assume people are buying these products because they're marketing or because of their marketing or just because they have prior association. So pretty much what I mean by that is at the end of the day, like for me, I know I buy products because when I go, it's never like a marketing thing. Like I'll look at the options, I'll look at whatever one, like for example, if it's something new. So for example, like I just started growing out my beard again, and I'm like, well, I probably should get beard shampoo because that's not make it gross. I gotta clean. And I didn't like I don't know what to buy. I just buy whatever. So I went in, I saw the packaging. I'm like, I like this packaging. And then I read the back, and then I um looked at the reviews, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Sure, let's go with this. It's not an expensive option. Might as might as well. So it's never like, oh, I see this advertisement, therefore I need to get it. So I don't know exactly how companies are going to be able to tell that like they're what they're doing is actually working in their favor or if they're just spending money. And I guess you would only know if they stop spending any money on advertising, but I guess that's playing with fire because if you do and then things don't work out and actually does work, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So how can you apply it in school? So similar to what I said, I'm like, you could definitely utilize patterns of how companies approach each type of media, like because we did talk about how they how certain companies in like the top 50 approached it. And then you could also utilize by there is like a significant amount of examples that were talked about during class. And you can sort of just take like I wouldn't say copy their ideas, but you can think about their kinds of ideas when it came up to different ways they actually did their print media and then put it into your campaign or future work if you wanted to do that. And then I also said you can attempt to use it in your IMC campaign for this project if you want to try and target those kinds of people. Okay, and now we're at the examples. So I found a newspaper ad and I just sort of liked it because when I'm reading, it's just so big and it's like nice and colorful. And at the end of the day, like although I might not use it, it was like the first thing I looked at, for example. So if I'm going to be reading a newspaper, I know that my eye is immediately drawn to the ad itself. And if I, let's say, like actually used it, then I would be inclined to actually go through because there is a discount and I'm all about discounts. Then we have a magazine ad. Personally, I just like this because it's like it's a Big Mac and a Honda, which let's be real here, are very two large companies. And it is so colorful. So when you're just flipping through pages, I'm all about the images. Like when I read Guinness Book of World Records when I was younger, I never read it. I looked at the pages, I looked at the pictures. So this kind of thing's right up my alley in terms of I don't think it's media. I'm just like looking at a picture of a aesthetic burger or some nice cars. And I don't really like think that at the end of the day, like I'll ever necessarily be influenced to buy something like that because well, one, it's very tough for me to McDonald's anymore. Um, Stomach just can't handle it. And then in terms of Honda, it's a pretty big purchasing decision. But at the end of the day, it's stays in my mind, and I'm aware of the brand, and it's like almost like a positive association or representation that it creates for me. And lastly, it's the Stranger Things. Now, personally, I just really liked it because, well, I like Stranger Things. Two, I think it's a really cool design because it's 3D and it really sticks out. And it's like almost like a retro theme going on. And the reason why I think like something like this is, I guess, like useful is that it doesn't need necessarily to have engagement in terms of like, oh, I'm going to go out and buy this, but this acts more as a reminder. Like this season is coming out, make sure you watch it. So, and I know how seasons end up going where like I end up forgetting all about it. And then when I forget all about it, I, when it comes out, I'm like, oh, but with something like this, if you're just driving by, you'll be like, oh, okay, let me give it a watch. And there we are. So those are my examples, and that is my reflection for this week. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.